Welcome back for another episode of Errant Adventures, the solo actual play podcast where stories are told at the speed of dice. With me, Steve Morrison, your game master and solo player. Now come on, let's grab the dice and see where our story goes. Welcome back for Chapter 18 of Book 1, Meridian. Last time, they have to make several departures to refuel, refine that fuel, and jump back into the conduit. On their last jump before Oragota, they discover a derelict mining ship. Sejana takes her personal fighter, the Harrower, to investigate, but she can't determine if the ship was destroyed by weapons fire or an internal explosion. It is strange because there is evidence of a small envirodome having been attached to the mining ship, and there are more dead bodies than would fit within the ship itself. Sejana scans the belt, but doesn't detect anything because of the high amounts of heavy metals. She returns to the mining ship and establishes a quick link, pulling the logs in black box, which are all encrypted. She saves them for her return to Cassida and returns to the Wolf. We see a brief scene aboard the Blessing of the Ancients, a ship hiding in the asteroid belt. They watch as the Harrower scans the area, and when the fighter flies away, they resume their mission in the belt. Arriving in the Oragota system, the crew of the Howlin Wolf see their first look at Creus, a tainted water world with a pinkish-hued atmosphere. Einar issues orders to the crew, and they begin their approach. As the Howlin Wolf approaches the pinkish-blue atmosphere of Creus, Einar shuts off the comm and turns to the others with a grimace. "Hell of a bureaucracy to navigate," he says. "I had to talk to 7 different bureaucrats about our cargo, our point of origin, and our crew complement. It didn't even seem like they were worried about what we had coming in. They just kept saying they needed to dot every I and cross every T." Ayati grins as the ship hits the atmosphere with a shudder. "I'm surprised they don't have automated data spreaders to pull all that info." Einar grumbles and says, "That didn't even cover the actual trading. I apparently have to make an appointment with a assistant deputy undersecretary at the Ministry of Trade just to get started." Ayati throws a glance at Sejana, grin still plastered on her face. The liar chuckles and shakes her head. "It's not much better from my end. I haven't found a traditional contract broker on Creus yet. Instead, the government has installed a job board of sorts on the Quick that people can post their needs to. It's hard to tell which jobs are legitimate or not. There are definitely some that seem like contract killings disguised as waste removal. I'd be surprised if there wasn't a thriving criminal underbelly here." "All the more reason to stay close to the ship," Einar says. "Ayati, you should be receiving landing coordinates and the docking passes we'll need for the Creus' starport." "Got it, Cap. Hopefully I don't have to talk to 3 different controllers just to set down." "If they give you any trouble, let me know and I'll talk to them," Einar says. "In the meantime, Ludin, I'm going to get you set up with some diagnostics." Together, he and Ludin leave the bridge and head down toward engineering. Maybe it's time for some dice rolling. Let's roll a quick pilot check for Ayati as she's bringing the ship down into the starport. I don't think the stakes here are going to mean that failure equals an uncontrolled landing or crash. Instead, I think she's going to inadvertently break some sort of regulation established here on Creus, which will result in further trouble for the crew in the form of a fine or other bureaucratic rigmarole. Before we get to that piloting roll, however, let's figure out what the weather is like as the ship is descending through the atmosphere. I could ask the Oracle, but let's just roll 2D, and the higher means that the weather is nicer. If the roll is below a 6, I'm going to increase the difficulty from routine to an average check. If it's snake eyes on the dice, well, then she's getting a bane die as well. I don't think we've covered what boons and banes are yet, but it's either rolling 3 dice and taking the 2 highest if you have a boon die, or rolling 3 and taking the 2 lowest if it's a bane die. All right, so here is the 2d6 roll. Oh man, that is so close. That was a 3 on the dice. So the weather is not great here, but it's not a full-blown storm. All right, Ayati is a good pilot. She's got a +3 on her roll. Normally, I'd give her the opportunity to take more time, but I think maybe there is a bad storm brewing, and flight control wants ships landing as quickly as possible before it hits. So we'll be rolling 2d6 +3 against a target number of 8. Here we go. 7 + 3 is a 10. Easy peasy for the former scout pilot. Let's go ahead and envision this. The winds begin buffeting the Wolf as the ship continues its descent. A small bead of sweat is forming at the corner of Ayati's dark hair as the pilot concentrates on her readings. There's a massive storm forming, Creus's flight control warns, and Ayati can see hints of it in the wind reports. She still hasn't broken through the cloud cover, so she's essentially flying blind. Behind her, Sejana is silent, letting the pilot work, but she has dismissed the job board postings on her quick screen and now has the sensors panel active, feeding data to the pilot interface. Already she's fielded one comm from Einar about their status, and he knows better than to interrupt again with the ship bucking and writhing against the storm that's brewing. Checking the ship's attitude reading, Ayati pushes the controls down further, sending the Wolf into more of a nosedive. The wind readings are starting to concern her, and she doesn't want to be caught up in a full-blown hurricane during their descent. The ship responds immediately, pointing its nose toward where the vast oceans should be. As if in response to her adjustment, the clouds suddenly vanish, and Ayati and Sejana see a massive domed city floating amidst an ocean, with only a small strip of land visible just beyond it. Ayati aims the Wolf toward this floating city and pushes the engines into full acceleration. Alarms begin to sound as the ship accelerates toward the outer edge of the dome, and both of them are pushed back in their seats as the inertial adjusters compensate for the increased speed. Within a minute, the platforms of the starport become visible, cocooned in a separate dome outside the larger dome of the capital city. Following the course provided by Starport Control, Ayati brings the ship down towards the dome, pulling the nose up and cutting off the drive as the thrusters engage to slow the Wolf's plummet. At 3,000 meters, the section of the dome above their landing platform creases, and the transparent steel panels slide open. Expertly, Ayati drops the Wolf into a chute that separates the starport's atmosphere from the planet, like an airlock. The ship's descent has slowed considerably now, and the buffeting stops completely as the dome above seals shut and another set of panels slide open below. Finally, the Wolf emerges into the atmosphere of the starport proper, and Ayati brings the ship down for an easy landing on the docking platform. When it's done, Sejana says, "Well done, Ayati." The pilot grins and says, "Been a while since I've had a challenge like that. Good to know I've still got it." The starport offices of the Creusian Ministry of Trade look unimpressive, a drab gray building nestled against the internal wall of the atmosphere bubble. Beyond it, Einar can see an airlock that passes through into the city proper. The starport shuttle drops him off at the front door, and Einar almost bounds out of the seat, arms flailing for a moment, before he catches himself. The driver gives him an apologetic smile and shrug, to which Einar responds with a grunt, saying, "Haven't acclimated to the gravity yet." "You get used to it," the driver says. Then grinning, he says, "Makes weightlifting that much easier." Einar shakes his head and says, "I don't plan to stay long enough to become used to it." The driver shrugs again and wishes him a good day before pulling back onto the street. It isn't nearly as busy or crowded as Einar expected, considering this is the primary starport on Creus. Although, looking around, he wonders why anyone would want to come out this way. It isn't exactly a luxury planet. Turning back toward the door, Einar squares his shoulders and strides toward them with purpose. Efficiency, after all, is the company motto. The faster he can sell his cargo and load up on other cargo, all the better. The doors slide open, and in stark contrast to the street, there's a bustle of people inside, most of whom are wearing a simple blue-gray tunic with 3 waves stitched into the left breast. Einar spots a few other captains sitting in a waiting area. One of the workers approaches and says, "Can I help you, sir?" Einar nods and says, "I'm looking to do some trading. I have deliveries from the Kassadin system." The worker checks their queue and says, "You'll want to speak with an assistant deputy undersecretary." Waving a hand in Einar's direction, they say, "All right, your ident has been scanned and added to our wait list. Please have a seat and we'll be with you as soon as we can." Einar says, "Do you have an estimated wait time?" The worker shakes their head and says, "Apologies. It could be anywhere between 15 minutes and 6 hours. We do have a refreshment station, and you're, of course, welcome to use our bio facilities." Restraining a sigh, Einar says, "Thank you for your assistance," and walks over to join the other waiting captains. Back aboard the Howlin Wolf, Sejana sits at the desk in her quarters, scrolling through open contracts on Creus. There isn't a full brokerage on this planet, which makes sense for an out-of-the-way world, but she does find a part-time broker named Colston, who offers contracts. According to her data on Creus, Colston is sanctioned by the government, and therefore more likely to deliver payment. All right, let's roll up some potential contracts for Sejana to explore. I think I'm going to use the random tables in the encounters section of the core rulebook to generate these. These will all be D66 rolls. So for the first potential contract, the patron, 26, that is a tribal leader. The mission, 23, find a lost cargo. Okay. The target, 22, an alien artifact. I'm going to say this is an ancient artifact from the Creusian people rather than something from outside of the world. And then the opposition, 65, the target is protected by a third party. That's a pretty good first contract, especially because we know that Creus has indigenous people who are being oppressed by the colonizing government. We also know that the government is obsessed with something. Maybe they're obsessed with gaining ancient Creusian artifacts because it's a way that they keep the people controlled. Whoever holds the relics holds the power. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's roll up a couple more potential contracts. All right, contract number 2. 41 is a merchant. That's their patron. Mission is 65. Aid a target. What is the target? 14, random trade goods. And the opposition, criminals, thieves, or saboteurs. Okay, this one could be interesting as well. Looks like a merchant who has had some goods stolen. Fairly straightforward retrieval mission. Our third contract, 36, police officer. The mission, 32, transport a person. Target, 21, computer data. And 56, out of fuel or ammunition. Well, Sejana's been working with the police a lot in Kassada, so I'm less inclined toward this one, but there's one thing that matters to a liar, the pay. Considering Sejana's last contract ended with her almost dying and making no rue, I think she's definitely aware that she needs a contract that will bring in some revenue. I need to figure out a way to fairly come up with contract pay. I feel like maybe creating a table like the freight table in the trade section would work well. Yeah, let's give that a try. So I'm going to roll a streetwise check for Sejana for a potential DM. She also gets a +4 DM for Creus, having a population score at or above 8. And that is essentially indicating that there are lots of people on this planet and therefore more likely for there to be contracts that a liar would be interested in. So let's go ahead and roll that streetwise against an average target number and see how we do. Sejana has a skill level of 0 in streetwise, but she does have 2 intellect, so that's a +2 to the roll. Here we go. 6 on the dice plus 2 is an 8. So that's a success, but there's no effect. So I think she gets a hold of Kalston, but he's not the easiest broker to work with. All right, let's roll once for each potential contract. Each roll will be at +4 for population. For contract number 1, that's a 12. And looking at this little chart that I copied over, that would be 5D. Contract number 2 is 11. That's 4D. And contract number 3 is 16. That's 6D. So now we've got to roll up those totals. So I've decided that the major worlds will provide a times 10,000 rue multiplier, times 5,000 for minor worlds, and times 1,000 for outer edge worlds. Creus is a minor world, so let's attach a final rue payment to each contract. So for the first contract, we're going to roll 5D. That is 12 times 5K, because this is a minor world, for 60K. So 60,000 rue is the offer for the tribal leader. 4D for the second contract. This is the merchant. Oh, wow. 19 times 5,000 is 95,000 rue. That's a big amount. And then rolling 6D for contract number 3. 16 times 5K, that's 80K. So 80,000 rue. Well, that's quite the spread. All right, let's envision this. The broker answers her comm with a sour frown. His eyes are slightly red and bleary, and he squints through the quick screen at her. Who are you? C'est Jean Luchel, she replies. I'm looking for a contract. Shaking his head, he says, Creus only allows licensed liars to take contracts, and I don't know you. I am licensed. I can transmit my ident now, if you like. We only have a couple of liars on Creus, and you ain't one of them. Sejana refrains from sighing and says, I just arrived on planet. My ship will be here for a few days, and I thought I would see if there was any work available. If you'll accept a data burst, I can provide my bona fides. Kalston grunts and says, Fine, send him over. Sejana complies, and within seconds the data packet has been transmitted. The broker eyes it and frowns. Then he says, All right, looks in order. But if you take one of my contracts and then fuck off before it's finished, I'll put a black mark on your license from here to the edge of the reaches. I know my business, Sejana replies, feeling a cold irritation rising in her chest. Well, I've got 3 open contracts at the moment, and other liars are busy. So, the first one comes from the chief swimmer herself to retrieve a cargo unit that has been misplaced down by the seaside bends. I'm sorry, chief swimmer? Sejana asks. Technically, she's known as the Current of the Sea, but she's the leader of the native Creusian people. But most people topside just call her Chief Swimmer. Kalston glances at the quick screen as if challenging her to say anything, then back to another screen. Yeah, they're offering 60,000 rue for the return of the cargo unit. I got another from merchant named K. Murad. Thanks, Starforge reference guide, by the way. Who had some cargo stolen from his berth in Starport. According to his testimony, the cargo containers have... It's at 39 on the Book of Random Tables number 2 list for cargo. Oxygen heterocyclics. The hospitals have been trying to create a treatment for exposure to the atmosphere, and they're part of the process. Lots of money there. He's offering $95,000 for the safe return of his cargo. The last one is a request for transport from the Creus Defense Force. One of their scout ships is out of contact, most likely from a fuel loss and shutdown, but last they heard the ship was close to a sensor platform. Their ships are on the other side of the system doing exercises, and if there's a ship available here to go pick up the scout, it would save them from burning fuel from the far side of the system. They're offering 80,000 rue. That's what I got, take 'em or leave 'em. Sejana thinks for a moment and says, The merchant, Murad, does he have any idea who might have taken his cargo? Do I look like I'm here to do the job for you? Is that the one you want? Carlson demands. Yes, I'll take it. Transmit the contract and I'll authenticate it. He grunts and disconnects the comm. Shaking her head, Sejana stands and grabs her gear. Within seconds, the comm chimes and the contract appears on her queue. She scans through it and attaches her liar ident to it, claiming the contract. On her way out, she passes Ayati in the cargo hold, working through an inventory list. The pilot looks at her and smiles. Did you get a contract? Sejana nods. Well, that's great, Ayati says. Hopefully this one's less dangerous. We shall see. It takes about 3 hours before an assistant deputy undersecretary is available. He introduces himself as Doran Velez, and he stares at the Huldron from behind a pair of round glasses as Einar takes a seat. What can I do for you? He checks the quick screen in front of him. Captain Stargleam? I've got cargo from Cassida. I fly for Zhang Imports, and we have a contract to deliver oscilloscopes and spectrum analyzers. Einar holds a data sheet up. I brought copies in case you would need them. Okay, so Einar has successfully made contact with someone on Creus, so let's deal with some trading. Now, because I've been using the freight rules, there are set amounts of freight that's sold. Rather than delving into the speculative trading rules quite yet, I'm going to continue using the freight rules with a slight twist. I've decided to include a roll to determine how much margin they make when they sell the cargo. So I'll have Einar roll a broker check, and if he fails the roll, he'll sell the cargo at a 15% margin. If he equals the target number of 8, it'll be a standard 20% margin, and if he succeeds with an effect, it'll be a 25% margin. I think that will give us enough variance that it should make it worth rolling. So let's grab the dice and sell some cargo. Einar has a full load of 80 tons of cargo, all destined for Creus. He has a broker skill of 1, so let's roll it and see how this goes. 3 plus 1 isn't going to be enough. I wonder if Assistant Deputy Undersecretary Velez is unimpressed with the cargo delivery. All right, well, so that means that the company bought the cargo for 2,176,000 rue, and they're selling it for 2,560,000 rue. That's based on the freight rate in the rulebook for cargo transported 6 parsecs. Einar clears 384,000 rue from this transaction, which is not bad at all. And if he can find some cargo to transport from here to the Echelon system, which is 4 parsecs away on the return to Cassida, he could make up some of that money. So why don't we go ahead and roll up what freight might be available here on Creus. I've got my DMs already factored for the cargo levels, so let's roll another broker check and see if Einar has better luck finding cargo. There it is, 11 on the dice, plus 1 is a 12. So let's get to rolling on our lots. For our major lots, we get a plus 4. That's an 11 total, which is 4D. For minor lots, we get a plus 8. That's a 13, so that's 5D. And for incidental lots, we get a plus 10, so that's a 19, so that is 9D. I think I did this wrong before, where I conflated the lots and how many tons there were, but I think I've got it figured out now. So Einar has a lot of options he can take. Let's go ahead and roll the dice and see how much we have of each lot. So the 4D for the major lots is going to be 10 lots of, and then we roll 1D times 10. That is 6. So that's 60 tons. Okay, so there are 10 lots of 60 tons of cargo. For the minor, we're going to roll 5D. That is 23 lots of, rolled a 2, so that's 10 tons. So there are 23 lots of 10-ton cargoes. And then for the incidental lots, we're going to roll 9D. That is 37 lots of, 6. So 37 lots of 6 tons. So the way that this works is that Einar can take lots of cargo, he can't break up any lots. So if we have 10 lots of 60-ton cargoes, that means we essentially have like 6,000 tons of major cargo that is ready to transport out of Creus. We're going to take one lot of 60 tons of major cargo, and we're going to take 2 lots of 10 tons of minor cargo to fill up the hold. So that way we'll fill up all 80 tons of our cargo space. So let's get back to the scene and envision this. Einar and Doran walk through all the listed cargo in the Wolf's hold, and the Assistant Deputy Undersecretary is able to provide contacts for selling all the various items. He's also able to give Einar some leads on cargo to take to Equilon. Having spent around 5 hours at the Ministry of Trade, Einar returns to the ship and starts making calls. He gets most of the cargo sold off by the time the businesses close, and makes arrangements to have the cargo unloaded tomorrow. Once that bit of business is finished, he leaves his quarters and heads to the galley where Ayati and Ludin are making a small meal. Ludin seems really excited by the prospect of eating real food after having 11 days worth of experience eating the rehydrated food pastes they keep aboard ship. "What's all this?" Einar says as he enters the galley and sees a handful of pots and pans, plus a crate from a Creusian food vendor. Ayati looks up and grins. "I thought we could use a nice meal. Don't worry, I didn't use ship funds for it. I bought it all myself." Einar chuckles. "I wouldn't have been upset if you had used ship funds for it. I just wasn't expecting a home-cooked meal tonight." "Well, I figured since you suggested we stay in port, we could at least bring a little of Creus's cuisine to us. I think I've made this risotto right, based on the recipe I pulled off the quick." "It smells good," Ludin says. "Agreed," Einar replies. "Should I go grab Luciale?" "She left while you were at the ministry," Ayati says. "Didn't say when she'd be back." Einar grunts. "All right, well, we should save her some at least." Looking between the captain and the pilot, Ludin says, "Shouldn't she be here for a crew meal?" Einar shakes his head. "Luciale's not, strictly speaking, crew. She rents a berth from us and does her lyring work as we travel around. Now, she's welcome at any crew meal we have, but as often as not, she's away from the ship when we're docked." "Oh, she seemed like she was part of the crew," Ludin says. "Interesting." "Like I said, she's not technically crew, but she is crew in all the ways it matters. Now, come on, let's eat before this gets cold." Aboard the Blessing of the Ancients, Advocate Saral enters the bridge and his crew rises. He looks at them with a mixture of pride and annoyance. He has told them they don't have to follow the strict decorum when they're out on mission, but he supposes today is an important day. "Return to your stations," he says, taking his place at his command chair. "Open a comm to the ship." "Open," the comm officer says. "Brothers and sisters, today is a good day. We were sent to this system to clear out interlopers and prepare the way for the strike fleet. We have done so, and over the last 2 days, the fleet has gathered. Now we embark on our next mission. I know you will perform your duties with honor and faith. The spirits are with us, and if they continue to bless our task as they have, by tomorrow, the Origota system will be part of the hierarchy." Thanks for listening to Errant Adventures. If you enjoyed the show, please spread the word. And if you want to support the show directly, leave me a review or support me on Patreon at patreon.com/errantadventures. You can also buy me a coffee at ko-fi.com/errantadventures. If you want to interact with me, my handle on all the socials is @errantsolopod, or you can email me at errantsolopod@gmail.com. I also post short fiction and campaign-related materials on my website, errantadventurespod.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the deep, liars.